The look on their faces when I walked into the Ritz-Carlton ballroom in downtown Seattle will haunt me forever, in the best possible way. It had been 12 years since the Thompson family decided I wasn't worth their time. 12 years since they convinced themselves that their awkward, socially inept son would never amount to anything. 12 years since they stopped believing in me entirely. The invitation had arrived at my Palo Alto office 3 weeks earlier, delivered by a courier in an expensive envelope with embossed gold lettering. You are cordially invited to celebrate the initial public offering of Thompson Digital Solutions, it read, announcing my younger brother Jake Thompson's moment of triumph as he took his company public on NASDAQ. I held that invitation between my fingers, feeling the weight of more than just expensive paper. Why now? Why invite the family failure to witness the Golden Boy's success? Was it pity? Guilt? Or perhaps they genuinely believed I might have somehow scraped together enough respectability to not embarrass them in front of Seattle's tech elite. My assistant Rebecca had knocked on my office door that morning, holding the invitation with a puzzled expression. Mr. Thompson, she had said carefully, this arrived by courier. It's addressed to you personally, not the company. I had taken the envelope, immediately recognizing the expensive paper stock and formal presentation. My family had always been obsessed with appearances, with maintaining their image as Seattle's most successful medical and business dynasty. Everything they touched had to reflect their status. Should I add this to your calendar? Rebecca had asked when I told her what it was. No, I had replied immediately. I won't be attending. But that night, alone in my Palo Alto penthouse, I found myself staring at the invitation again. For 12 years, I had built a life completely separate from the Thompson family name. I had created data flow technologies from nothing, revolutionized data compression, become one of the most respected entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And they had no idea. Growing up in the Thompson household meant living in the shadow of expectations I could never meet. While Jake was the charming athlete with perfect grades and natural leadership abilities, I was the weird kid who spent hours taking apart electronics and building computers in the garage. Marcus, you need to focus on real skills, my father would say dismissively whenever he found me deep in code or circuit boards. This computer hobby won't lead anywhere meaningful. My father, David Thompson, owned one of Seattle's largest construction companies, specializing in high-end commercial developments. He had built his empire through relationships, charm, and an understanding of traditional business that seemed to come naturally to him. In his world, success meant golf club memberships, board positions, and the respect of Seattle's established elite. My mother, Dr. Patricia Thompson, was a renowned cardiologist at Seattle Children's Hospital. She had pioneered several surgical techniques and published extensively in medical journals. Her office walls were covered with awards, degrees, and photos of her with medical luminaries. She understood excellence, but only the kind that came with institutional recognition and traditional markers of achievement. Jake had inherited the best of both parents, my father's charisma and business instincts, my mother's intelligence and drive. From the time he could walk, it was clear he would excel at whatever he chose to pursue. Star quarterback in high school, valedictorian, full scholarship to Stanford, internships at major consulting firms during college. He was everything our parents had dreamed of in a son. I, on the other hand, was the anomaly. Socially awkward, obsessed with technology that my parents didn't understand, more comfortable with algorithms than with people. My mother would shake her head whenever parent-teacher conferences revealed my social struggles. Marcus has potential, teachers would say diplomatically, but he needs to learn to connect with his peers. What they really meant was that I was the weird kid who preferred machines to people, who could explain quantum computing but couldn't hold a normal conversation at lunch. The first signs of real conflict came when I was 15. I had built my first computer from scratch, salvaging parts from electronics stores and teaching myself assembly language programming. I spent entire weekends in the garage, surrounded by circuit boards and technical manuals, completely absorbed in understanding how each component worked. Marcus, my father had said one Saturday morning, finding me hunched over a motherboard with a soldering iron, "This has gone too far. You're wasting your entire weekend on this nonsense." "It's not nonsense, Dad," I had protested. "I'm learning how computers actually work at the hardware level. This knowledge will be incredibly valuable in the future." "Valuable?" He had laughed condescendingly. "Marcus, real value comes from understanding people, building relationships, creating actual businesses that solve real problems. This hobby is turning you into a hermit." That conversation established a pattern that would dominate my teenage years. Every achievement I made in technology was dismissed as irrelevant. Every hour I spent programming was seen as time wasted. My parents viewed my passion for computers as an escape from reality rather than a pathway to it. The breaking point came during my sophomore year at University of Washington. I had been developing what I believed was revolutionary compression software. algorithms that could reduce file sizes by unprecedented amounts while maintaining perfect quality. I was obsessed, spending 18-hour days coding, missing classes, living on energy drinks and determination. The breakthrough had come at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in February. I had been working on a particularly complex algorithm for lossless compression when suddenly the pieces fell into place. The code compiled without errors, and when I ran the test, the results were extraordinary. Files that typically required hundreds of megabytes were compressed to a fraction of their original size without any loss of quality. I had sat in my dorm room, staring at the screen, realizing I had solved a problem that major tech companies had been working on for years. This wasn't just an incremental improvement, it was a fundamental breakthrough that could change how the world handled digital information. My parents saw it differently. They saw a dropout in the making, a son who was throwing away his education for what my father called fantasy programming projects. The confrontation that changed everything happened on a cold February evening when I excitedly tried to demonstrate my breakthrough to the family. I had driven home that night, practically vibrating with excitement. For the first time in my life, I had created something genuinely revolutionary. This wasn't just academic theory or a hobby project. This was technology that could change industries. I couldn't wait to share it with my family, to finally prove that my passion wasn't just an escape from reality. "Dad, Mom, you have to see this," I had said, practically bursting through the front door with my laptop bag. "I've solved a compression problem that major companies have been working on for years. This could change everything." My father was in his study, reviewing construction blueprints for his latest commercial development. He barely looked up from his papers when I entered. "Marcus, when was the last time you attended a real class? Your professors have been calling. This is more important than classes," I insisted, setting up my laptop on his desk. "I'm creating something that could be worth millions." That's when my father exploded. "Millions? Marcus, you're delusional. You're a college dropout playing with toys while your brother is building real achievements. Jake has internships lined up, leadership positions, actual accomplishments. You have what? Code that nobody will ever use?" My mother joined us in the study, her voice taking on that clinical tone she used with difficult patients. "Marcus, honey, we're worried about you. This obsession isn't healthy. You're isolating yourself, failing your classes, living in a fantasy world where you think you're going to revolutionize technology." "I'm not living in a fantasy," I protested, opening my laptop to show them the compression demonstration. "Look at this. I can take a 100-megabyte file and compress it to 5 megabytes without losing any quality. Do you understand what that means?" My father glanced at the screen for exactly 3 seconds before dismissing it. "I see numbers on a computer screen, Marcus. That's not revolutionary. That's playing with software." "Playing with software?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, this technology could transform streaming media, cloud storage, mobile applications. Every major tech company would want to license this." "No," my father said with finality. "You're avoiding reality, and we're not going to enable this anymore." My mother nodded in agreement. "Marcus, we've watched you disappear into this computer world more and more each year. You don't have friends, you don't date, you don't participate in normal activities. This isn't healthy development for a young man." "Because I'm building something important," I shouted, my frustration finally boiling over. "I'm creating technology that could change the world, and you're worried about whether I'm popular enough?" "We're worried about your future," my mother said. "What happens when this computer phase ends and you have no real skills, no degree, no ability to function in the actual world?" The next morning, they presented me with an ultimatum. Return to school full-time, abandon my computer projects, and focus on getting a real degree in business or engineering, or find my own way in the world without their financial support. I tried desperately to explain the potential of what I was building. I showed them technical papers that described similar approaches to compression. I found articles about the growing importance of data optimization in the emerging internet economy. I even contacted a professor at UW who confirmed that my algorithms represented a significant breakthrough, but they had already made up their minds. In their eyes, I was the awkward son who couldn't function in normal society, who had chosen to retreat into a world of code and circuits rather than face the real challenges of life. "Your choice, Marcus," my father had said coldly the next evening. "Join the real world or figure out how to survive in your fantasy on your own." I remember that moment with crystal clarity. Standing in the living room of the house where I had grown up, my parents sitting on the couch with expressions of stubborn certainty, Jake upstairs studying for his business finance midterms, and me holding a laptop that contained technology worth millions of dollars, technology they couldn't even be bothered to understand. "You really can't see it, can you?" I had asked quietly. "You can't see that this isn't a hobby or an escape. This is the future." "Marcus," my mother had said with that patient tone she used for delusional patients, "computers are tools, not a career. They'll never replace real human skills and relationships. I packed my belongings that night and left. There were no tearful goodbyes, no last-minute reconciliations, just silence and the sound of my car starting in the driveway as I drove away from the only home I had ever known. The years that followed were brutal, but transformative. I moved to a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, working nights at a tech support company to pay rent while spending every free moment refining my compression software. The code that my family had dismissed as worthless became my obsession and my salvation. Those first months were the hardest of my life. My parents had cut off all financial support, and I was too proud to ask for help. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, slept on a mattress on the floor, and wore the same 3 t-shirts in rotation. But every night I came home and worked on my algorithms. The breakthrough that changed everything came 8 months after I left home. I had been refining the compression algorithms, making them more efficient and robust, when I realized I could apply the same principles to real-time data streams. This wasn't just file compression anymore. This was live data optimization that could work for streaming video, audio, and any type of real-time communication. I filed my first patent application using money I had saved from my tech support job. The patent attorney, a kind older man named Gerald Morrison, had looked at my algorithms and whistled appreciatively. "Son," he had said, "if this works the way you describe, you're sitting on a gold mine." 18 months after leaving home, I received my first patent. 2 years later, I licensed my compression technology to a small startup called StreamTech for $200,000 upfront and a percentage of their revenue. It was enough money to quit my tech support job and focus full-time on developing data flow technologies. The validation felt incredible, but it was bittersweet. I had nobody to celebrate with, nobody to share the moment when I signed my first major licensing deal. My family had no idea that their dropout son had just created technology that would generate millions in revenue. By year 3, StreamTech had been acquired by a major media company, specifically for the compression technology they had licensed from me. The acquisition price was $50 million, and my licensing agreement entitled me to $12 million of that. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy with a good idea. I was a millionaire with proven technology that major corporations wanted. By year 5, Dataflow Technologies, the company I built around my worthless algorithms, had contracts with major tech companies worldwide. Netflix licensed our streaming optimization technology. Amazon used our algorithms for cloud storage compression. Apple integrated our software into iOS to reduce app download sizes. My compression software became the industry standard for streaming services, cloud storage, and mobile applications. Every time someone watched Netflix, uploaded photos to the cloud, or downloaded an app, they were using technology I had created in that garage my parents had wanted me to abandon. But success didn't erase the pain. For 12 years, there were no calls asking how I was doing, no acknowledgments of my achievements, no apologies. When Dataflow Technologies appeared in tech magazines, when I spoke at conferences, when my company's valuation reached 9 figures, my family remained silent. I learned about Jake's successes through mutual acquaintances and online articles. While I was building Dataflow, he had founded Thompson Digital Solutions, a marketing technology company that helped businesses optimize their online presence. It was solid, respectable work, the kind of traditional tech business that made sense to investors and parents. Jake had followed the conventional path our parents had wanted for both of us. MBA from Wharton, consulting experience at McKinsey, then founding a company that addressed clear market needs with proven business models. His success was real and earned, but it was also exactly what our parents could understand and celebrate. I followed his progress from afar, reading about funding rounds and client acquisitions in tech publications. Thompson Digital Solutions had grown steadily, serving Fortune 500 companies with data analytics and marketing optimization. It was the kind of company that looked impressive in investor presentations and board meetings. Meanwhile, Dataflow continued to grow in ways that were less visible but more fundamental. Our technology became infrastructure, the invisible foundation that made other companies' innovations possible. We didn't have consumer-facing products or flashy marketing campaigns, but we had something more valuable, technology that was essential to how the modern digital economy functioned. When I received that invitation to Jake's IPO celebration, I faced a choice. I could ignore it, continue building my life without them, or I could attend and close this chapter of my story on my own terms. For 3 weeks, the invitation sat on my desk, a reminder of a family that had written me off and a brother who had never looked for me. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to let them celebrate their success without any reminder of the son they had discarded. But another part of me, the part that had spent 12 years proving them wrong, wanted them to see what they had missed. I chose closure. The preparation was meticulous. I wore a tailored Tom Ford suit that cost more than my parents used to spend on my entire wardrobe in a year. My assistant had arranged for a discreet security detail, not because I expected trouble, but because successful tech CEOs don't take chances. My driver for the evening was James, who had been with me for 3 years and understood the significance of this particular journey. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Thompson?" James had asked as we drove north toward Seattle. He knew about my family situation, understood why I had never visited Seattle in the 12 years since Dataflow's founding. "I'm sure," I had replied, watching the familiar skyline of my hometown come into view. "It's time." Entering the Ritz-Carlton, I felt every eye in the room tracking my movement. The Seattle tech community is smaller than people realize, and my face had appeared on enough magazine covers and conference stages that I was recognizable to those who paid attention. But to my family, I was still the awkward dropout they had written off over a decade ago. The ballroom was magnificent, crystal chandeliers, panoramic views of Elliott Bay, and an atmosphere of barely contained excitement that always surrounds successful IPOs. Jake stood near the center of the room, surrounded by investors, journalists, and admirers, looking every inch the successful entrepreneur he had become. I observed him for several minutes before making my approach. He had grown into his confidence, carrying himself with a natural authority that had always come so easily to him. His success was genuine and earned, and despite everything between us, I felt a complicated mixture of pride and regret watching him in his moment of triumph. The crowd around Jake was impressive. Venture capitalists, tech executives, journalists from major publications. I recognized several faces from my own business dealings, people who had tried to schedule meetings with Dataflow over the years. It was surreal to see them celebrating my brother's success while having no idea that the founder of one of Seattle's most valuable tech companies was standing just 20 feet away. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit him. The confident smile faltered, replaced by an expression of shock that he quickly tried to mask. He excused himself from his conversation and began moving toward me, his steps uncertain for perhaps the first time in his adult life. "Marcus," he said when he reached me, his voice carefully controlled. I didn't expect you to come." "Hello, Jake," I replied calmly. "Congratulations on the IPO. Thompson Digital Solutions has built something impressive." He studied my face, searching for sarcasm or anger, but finding only genuine acknowledgement. Up close, I could see how much he had changed. The boyish features had matured into the face of a serious businessman. His confidence was real, earned through years of building something meaningful. "Thank you. That means more than you might expect." Before our conversation could continue, a distinguished man in his 60s approached us. I recognized him immediately. Robert Chen, one of Seattle's most prominent venture capitalists and a major investor in Jake's company. Chen Capital had been behind some of the most successful tech IPOs in Pacific Northwest history. "Jake," Robert said, extending his hand toward me with practiced charm, "aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" Jake hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, I saw the same conflict that had defined our family for years. Was I someone to be acknowledged or hidden? For 12 years, my existence had been so thoroughly erased from family narratives that even introducing me required a conscious choice. "Robert," Jake finally said, "this is Marcus. Marcus Thompson," I added, extending my hand to Robert. "Jake's brother." The confusion on Robert's face was immediate and profound. "Brother? Jake, you never mentioned having a brother." I watched Jake's face carefully as he processed this moment. For 12 years, my existence had been so thoroughly erased from family narratives that even his closest business associates had no idea I existed. The successful entrepreneur who commanded respect in boardrooms had literally never mentioned that he had an older brother. "We've been out of touch," Jake said diplomatically. "Out of touch," Robert repeated, looking between us with growing interest. "For how long?" 12 years, I answered simply. The weight of that number settled over our small group like a physical presence. 12 years wasn't a temporary estrangement or a minor family disagreement. It was a systematic erasure, a deliberate choice to pretend an entire person had never existed. Robert's investor instincts kicked in immediately. 12 years of family silence suggested either a catastrophic falling out or something deliberately hidden. His expression shifted from polite curiosity to professional interest. 12 years, Robert repeated slowly. "May I ask what you do for work, Marcus?" Before I could answer, I saw my parents approaching from across the room. Dr. Patricia Thompson looked exactly as I remembered, elegant, controlled, with the same expression of clinical assessment she brought to everything. My father, David Thompson, had aged more visibly, his hair now completely gray, but his posture still carried the same rigid authority that had dominated my childhood. Their faces when they recognized me were studies in shock and careful control. 12 years of absence, 12 years of never mentioning my name, and now I stood in their social circle, looking nothing like the awkward dropout they remembered. I had imagined this moment countless times over the years, but the reality was more complex than any scenario I had constructed. They looked older, more fragile somehow, but also more entrenched in their certainties. The successful couple who had built their reputations on being right about everything now faced evidence that they might have been catastrophically wrong about their own son. "Marcus," my mother said, her voice professionally neutral. "What a surprise to see you here." "Hello, Mother." "Dad." I nodded to each of them with polite courtesy. "You both look well." The formality of our exchange was painful in its artificiality. These were people who had raised me, who had shaped my early years, and now we spoke to each other like polite strangers at a networking event. "Robert," my father said, clearly attempting to manage the situation. "This is our older son, Marcus. He's been pursuing his own path for some time." "Pursuing his own path?" Robert repeated with growing curiosity. "What kind of path?" The moment of truth had arrived. For 12 years, I had built something extraordinary while my family convinced themselves I was a failure. Now, in front of Jake's most important investor, the truth would finally emerge. "I'm the founder and CEO of Dataflow Technologies," I said simply. The silence that followed was profound. Robert's eyes widened with immediate recognition, while my family's faces went through a rapid progression of emotions: confusion, realization, and finally, shock. "Dataflow Technologies?" Robert repeated, his voice rising with excitement. "The compression technology company? You're Marcus Chen?" "Thompson," I corrected gently. "Marcus Thompson, though I can understand the confusion. It's been 12 years since my family and I have been in contact." Robert turned to my parents with an expression of complete bewilderment. "David, Patricia, do you understand what your son has accomplished?" Dataflow Technologies is one of the most successful tech companies in the Pacific Northwest. Marcus revolutionized data compression. His algorithms power half the streaming services in the world. My father's face had gone completely pale. "I don't understand." "Marcus dropped out of college to play with computers." "Play with computers?" Robert's voice carried a note of disbelief. "David, your son's company is valued at over $3 billion. He holds 17 patents in compression technology. He's been featured on the cover of Forbes, TechCrunch, and Wired. How do you not know this?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. How does a family not know that their son had become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in their city? How do parents miss 12 years of extraordinary achievement happening just a few miles from their own doorstep? "We lost touch when Marcus chose to leave school," my mother said weakly, her clinical composure finally cracking. "Left school to build one of the most innovative tech companies in the world," Robert corrected sharply. Then, turning back to me with visible excitement, "Marcus, I had no idea you were connected to the Thompson family. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 2 years. Dataflow's technology integration could revolutionize what Jake's company is doing with data management." The irony was perfect and painful. Robert Chen, Jake's primary investor, had been pursuing a business relationship with the brother my family had written off as a failure. The dropout they had dismissed had become exactly the partner Jake's company needed for their next phase of growth. "I'd be happy to discuss potential collaboration," I replied professionally. Dataflow is always interested in working with innovative companies. Jake, who had been silent through this revelation, finally found his voice. "Marcus, I had no idea. I mean, I knew Dataflow existed, but I never connected." "You never connected it to your dropout brother," I finished gently. "I understand. Why would you? For 12 years, I've been effectively dead to this family." My mother stepped forward, her doctor's training helping her recover faster than my father. "Marcus, we made mistakes. We didn't understand what you were building." "You didn't try to understand," I corrected, keeping my voice calm and factual. "When I tried to show you my breakthrough that night, you called it fantasy programming. When I asked for support to pursue my vision, you gave me an ultimatum to abandon it or leave." "We were worried about your future," my father said, his voice lacking its usual authority. "My future?" I laughed, but without bitterness. "Dad, my computer hobby employs over 800 people. The algorithms you dismissed as worthless generate over $400 million in annual revenue. The fantasy you wanted me to abandon has created technology that billions of people use every day." Robert was watching this exchange with fascination and growing anger. As one of Seattle's most successful investors, he understood better than most what my parents had thrown away. "David, you threw out your son for pursuing exactly the kind of innovation that built Seattle's tech economy?" "We thought he was avoiding reality," my mother said defensively. "He was creating reality," Robert replied sharply. While most entrepreneurs were building incremental improvements, Marcus was solving fundamental problems. His compression algorithms didn't just improve existing technology, they made entirely new applications possible. A small crowd had begun to gather around our conversation, drawn by Robert's animated voice and the obvious tension. I recognized several other prominent figures from Seattle's tech community, people who knew my professional reputation but had no idea about my family history. The crowd included Jennifer Walsh, CEO of a major cloud services company, David Kim, founder of a successful mobile app development firm, and Sarah Martinez, a prominent tech journalist who had interviewed me for Forbes the previous year. They were all watching this family drama unfold with the kind of professional curiosity that made me uncomfortable. "Marcus?" Jake said quietly. "Can we talk privately?" I nodded, and we stepped away from the growing crowd to a quieter corner of the ballroom. The view from the windows showed Seattle's skyline, including the building where Dataflow's headquarters occupied 3 floors of premium office space. "I don't know what to say," Jake began, running his hand through his hair. 12 years, Marcus. I've been building my company for 8 years, and the whole time, my brother was building something incredible just a few miles away. You didn't know because you didn't want to know, I replied, but without anger. It was easier to maintain the family narrative that I was a failure than to question whether that narrative was wrong. "Did you ever think about contacting us when you became successful?" I considered his question carefully. "Many times, especially in the early years when I was struggling, when a little family support might have made the difference between success and failure. But then I realized something important." "What?" "I realized that I didn't want acceptance based on success. I wanted acceptance based on who I was, what I was trying to build, the vision I was pursuing. You all made it clear that wasn't enough." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing my words. "We were wrong, Marcus. I was wrong. I should have looked for you, should have tried to understand what happened." "Should have, could have," I said with a slight smile. "The past is fixed, Jake. The question is what we do moving forward." "I'd like to try to build something," he said hopefully. "Maybe not a full relationship immediately, but something." Before I could respond, Robert Chen approached us again, this time with several other investors and tech executives in tow. "Marcus," Robert said excitedly, "I've been telling everyone about this incredible coincidence. Some of these folks have been hoping to meet you for years." The next hour became a surreal networking session where I found myself at the center of attention at my brother's IPO celebration. Tech executives who had tried unsuccessfully to schedule meetings with me suddenly had access through a chance family encounter. Investment managers pitched collaboration opportunities. Entrepreneurs sought advice on building breakthrough technology companies. Meanwhile, my parents stood at the edge of conversations, watching their dismissed son command the respect and attention of Seattle's most successful business leaders. The awkward dropout they remembered had become someone these powerful people actively sought out. "Marcus," said Jennifer Walsh, CEO of a major cloud services company, "I've been hoping to discuss Dataflow's next-generation compression algorithms. Our data centers could benefit enormously from your technology. I'd be happy to have my team schedule a meeting." I replied professionally. "Actually," Robert interjected, "this might be perfect timing for a broader conversation. Jake's company specializes in data optimization for marketing applications. Marcus's compression technology could revolutionize how they handle client information. There might be a natural partnership opportunity here." The suggestion was brilliant and obvious. Thomson Digital Solutions handled enormous amounts of marketing data that could benefit dramatically from Dataflow's compression technology. A partnership could accelerate Jake's company's growth while providing Dataflow with a new application area for our algorithms. "It's an interesting possibility," I said, looking at Jake. "What do you think?" Jake's expression was complex, excitement about the business opportunity mixed with uncertainty about working with the brother he barely knew. "I think it could be incredible, but Marcus, I want to be clear about something." "What's that?" "If we do this, if we build a business relationship, I want it to be based on merit, not family connection. I want to earn the right to work with Dataflow Technologies." His words showed a maturity I hadn't expected, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt genuine respect for the man my little brother had become. "I wouldn't have it any other way," I replied. Robert beamed at both of us. "Gentlemen, I think we might be witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary." As the evening progressed, I found myself in the unexpected position of being a featured attraction at Jake's celebration. People wanted to hear about Dataflow's technology, about building a company from scratch, about the vision that had driven me to create revolutionary compression algorithms. My parents, meanwhile, hovered at the edges of conversations, clearly struggling to reconcile the son they remembered with the successful entrepreneur everyone was eager to meet. 12 years of assumptions had been shattered in a single evening. I watched my father during one particularly animated discussion about the future of data compression. A group of investors were asking detailed questions about Dataflow's roadmap, and I was explaining our research into quantum compression algorithms. My father stood just outside the circle, listening to his son discuss technology that was clearly beyond his understanding, but that obviously impressed everyone else in the room. Near the end of the night, my mother approached me while I was standing alone, looking out at Seattle's skyline. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology." I turned to face her, seeing something in her expression I had never witnessed before, genuine humility. "For what specifically, Mom?" "For not believing in you, for not trying to understand what you were building, For making you choose between your vision and your family. She paused, gathering her thoughts. For 12 years of silence when we should have been celebrating your achievements. And what changed your mind? I asked gently. Is it because Robert Chin told you I was successful, or because you genuinely understand that you were wrong? She considered my question carefully. Both, if I'm honest. Seeing how people here respect you, how Robert and the others talk about your work, forced me to confront how wrong we were about your potential. But more than that, seeing you tonight, seeing the man you've become despite our lack of support, made me realize what we lost. What did you lose? 12 years with our son. 12 years of being proud of something extraordinary instead of being embarrassed by something we didn't understand. Her words carried genuine regret, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that people can grow and change. I didn't build Dataflow for your approval, Mom, I said honestly. I built it because I believed in the technology, because I saw problems that needed solving. I know, and that's what makes it even more remarkable. My father joined us, looking older and more uncertain than I had ever seen him. Marcus, he began, his voice lacking its usual authority, I don't know how to fix what we broke. You can't fix it, Dad, I replied simply, but you can acknowledge it and make different choices moving forward. Would you be willing to give us that chance? I looked at both of them, these people who had shaped my early years, who had failed to support my vision, who had missed 12 years of my life. They weren't evil people, just limited ones who had made devastating choices based on narrow perspectives. I'm willing to try, I said finally. But it has to be based on who I am now, not who you remember or who you think I should have become. Agreed, my father said immediately. As the evening wound down, Jake approached me one final time. Marcus, there's something I need to tell you, he said seriously. What's that? For years, I wondered what happened to you. I asked Mom and Dad occasionally, but they always gave vague answers about you finding your own path. I never pushed because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because it was easier not to know? Yeah, because I was building my own success, and I didn't want to think about whether we had failed you somehow. He met my eyes directly. Tonight made me realize we did fail you. I failed you. Jake, you were 20 years old when I left. You were building your own life. But I never looked for you afterward. When I started my company, when I began moving in tech circles, I should have wondered whether my brilliant older brother might be out there doing something amazing. His words hit harder than my parents' apologies, because they came from someone who had chosen not to look, rather than someone who had actively driven me away. The brilliant older brother you remember was a socially awkward college dropout, I reminded him. No, Jake said firmly. The brilliant older brother I remember was someone who could build computers from scratch, who understood code like it was a natural language, who saw possibilities that nobody else could see. I should have known that person wouldn't just disappear. For the first time in 12 years, I felt something resembling brotherhood with Jake. What do we do now? He asked. We start over, I replied. As adults, as equals, as people who might actually have something to offer each other. I'd like that. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of changes. Jake and I began meeting regularly to discuss potential collaboration between our companies. The business opportunity was genuinely compelling. Thomson Digital Solutions processed massive amounts of marketing data that could benefit dramatically from Dataflow's compression technology. But more than the business potential, I found myself genuinely enjoying Jake's company for the first time since we were children. He had grown into a thoughtful, capable leader who understood both technology and business in ways that complemented my own expertise. 3 months later, Dataflow Technologies and Thomson Digital Solutions announced a strategic partnership that combined our compression algorithms with their data optimization platform. The collaboration exceeded both companies' projections, creating synergies that neither could have achieved alone. The partnership wasn't just successful, it was transformative for both companies. Thomson Digital Solutions could offer clients data processing capabilities that no competitor could match, while Dataflow gained access to new applications for our compression technology that opened entirely new market segments. But more importantly, Jake and I began rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. We met regularly to discuss business strategy, discovered we both enjoyed hiking the Olympic Peninsula, and slowly learned to appreciate the men we had each become. My parents required more time and patience. 12 years of absence couldn't be erased with a few conversations, but they made genuine efforts to understand both my work and my perspective. Family dinners became monthly occurrences where we carefully navigated new dynamics. One evening, 6 months after the IPO celebration, my father asked me a question that showed how much had changed. Marcus, I've been reading about your compression technology, trying to understand what you built. Could you explain it to me? Not the business aspects, but the actual innovation. The request surprised me. For the first time in my adult life, My father was asking to understand my work rather than dismissing it. I spent an hour explaining compression algorithms, showing him examples of how Dataflow's technology reduced file sizes while maintaining quality, demonstrating the mathematical elegance that made efficient compression possible. When I finished, he sat quietly for several minutes. I understand now, he said finally. Understand what? Why you couldn't give this up, why you had to pursue it even when we didn't support you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I understand that we asked you to abandon something genuinely revolutionary because we couldn't see its value. Yes, I said simply. I'm sorry, Marcus. Not just for not supporting you, but for not believing you had the vision to see something we couldn't. 6 months later, Dataflow Technologies went public ourselves with a valuation that exceeded most analysts' projections. Jake rang the opening bell with me at NASDAQ, and my parents sat in the gallery watching their dropout son celebrate a successful IPO. The revenge I had imagined for years had transformed into something more satisfying than I could have anticipated. Not destruction or humiliation, but vindication and reconstruction. The family that had written me off as a failure now celebrated achievements they had once tried to prevent. But the real victory wasn't their changed perception. It was the realization that I had never needed their approval to build something extraordinary. The awkward dropout they remembered had found his own path to success, creating technology that changed how the world handles information. During my IPO speech, I made a point that summarized everything I had learned. Innovation requires believing in possibilities that others can't see. Sometimes that means pursuing visions that seem impossible to people who love you. Sometimes it means choosing uncertainty over security, creation over convention. But when you find something worth building, something that can make the world work better, you have to build it, whether anyone believes in you or not. In the audience, I saw my family listening to words that finally explained the choice I had made 12 years earlier. The choice that had led to this moment. After the ceremony, Robert Chen approached me with a smile. Marcus, I have to ask, when you walked into Jake's IPO celebration, did you plan for all of this to happen? I considered his question carefully. I planned to close a chapter, Robert. I didn't expect to open a new one. Sometimes the best innovations come from unexpected connections. Sometimes they do. Today, Dataflow Technologies continues growing with offices in Seattle, San Francisco, Austin, and London. Our compression algorithms power streaming services used by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. The technology my family once dismissed as worthless has become infrastructure for the digital economy. Jake and I have become genuine partners, both in business and as brothers. Thomson Digital Solutions now handles data optimization for some of Dataflow's largest clients, while our compression technology enables their most ambitious projects. My parents and I maintain a careful but growing relationship. They can't undo 12 years of absence, but they've learned to celebrate the person I became rather than mourn the person they thought I should have been. The awkward dropout they once knew has become someone they're proud to claim as family. But more importantly, I've become someone I'm proud to be, not because of their approval, but because I had the courage to build something that mattered, even when nobody believed it was possible. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about creation, building something so extraordinary that those who doubted you have no choice but to recognize what they missed. Sometimes it's about proving that the vision they dismissed was worth pursuing, even when pursuing it meant leaving everything familiar behind. And sometimes, if you're very fortunate, that revenge transforms into something better. The chance to rebuild relationships on new foundations, where acceptance is based on who you are rather than who others think you should be. The invitation to Jake's IPO celebration sits framed on my office wall now, not as a reminder of family rejection, but as a symbol of transformation. The night when a family's narrative changed, when assumptions were shattered, when the dropout finally came home, not as a failure seeking forgiveness, but as a success offering second chances. That's the thing about innovation. It doesn't just change technology or business models. Sometimes it changes everything, including the families that couldn't see its value until success made it impossible to ignore. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to remember that their vision is worth pursuing, even when others can't see its value. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply refusing to give up on what you know is possible.